Hey everybody, it's Romania Black. We're on episode 5 of number 6. And I have started reading the manga. um, After watching episode 4, I was like, I'm going to start in on reading the manga and see if I can catch up. And so far, I've only read volumes 1 and 2. And volume 2 seems to end right around the time that episode 4 ends, which there's 9 volumes, and this episode 5 marks kind of almost the halfway point, but the manga's not even halfway through at all yet. Like, we won't get halfway through till volume 5. So that does make me believe there's going to be a lot of extra content to talk about, because so far I've been taking notes of what the manga has done differently or included extra that was not in the anime so far. And there's been some notes, some certain things, but for the most part, up until episode 5 that we're watching today, it's been very, very similar. There's not been a whole lot of extra stuff from the anime, which is good. I have a feeling that from this episode on, that may be a turning point, and we may be getting a lot more like condensed things with this anime, whereas the manga will probably expand on them more, because the manga itself is like 3 chapters of volume, and each chapter is like 40 pages, so they're big chapters. So interesting. But I will probably be doing a soapbox episode after this series where I go over the overarching things that the manga does differently than the anime. And I'm sure that with there still being like 7 volumes and only 6 episodes left, or 6 or 7 episodes left, that there's going to be a lot to cover and talk about. But I did want to point out a couple of things that I've noticed so far with the manga versus the anime. The main thing is the grandma. Safu's grandmother, she is eerily not present in the manga as of yet. Um, in the anime, the first couple of episodes, we saw the grandma, we got introduced to the Twilight House, and we got kind of her perspective as an elderly person who's been living in number 6. And in the manga, we don't really get that. She's mentioned, but we don't get those scenes like we had in the anime. There are a few things. Safu does tell Shion that she loves him in that chat, in the video chat. She does say that she loves him and like says love like a romantic term. So there's that I thought was interesting. The bee we get has stung, like Shion is aware that the bee stung him, and he's aware that he's been infected. That is made explicit in the manga as well. And then there's a couple of other things that, like I said, I'll talk in the soapbox thing, but pretty much the one thing that I don't think is explicitly said in the anime, it's kind of left to the audience's assumption, but Shion has a inborn tendency to want to rebel against the system. Even though he cares about the people in number 6, primarily his mother, he does have this like inborn want to rebel against the system. And we see that when he's like yelling on the balcony in the rain and like screaming, and he can't wait for the typhoon. He can't wait for something to disrupt this utopia. But in the manga, it's described as Shion has this urge to destroy within him, which I find fascinating. And in the last episode, episode 4, we saw that come out when the man in the Latch building was talking about all these nefarious things that he wanted to get Nezumi, or Rat, involved in. And Shion was like, no. And Shion just kind of lost it. And in the manga, they have these moments where Shion is like, I want to destroy things. And I find that very interesting. And I'm curious to see where that will go, because Shion seems like such a gentle character, but to have this like inner voice inside of him telling him to like wreck stuff is very, very intriguing. But yeah, so just things on that. I've been calling him Rat, and then people in the comments are like Nezumi, and I'm like, Nezumi sounds a lot better, but I'll probably be going back and forth throughout this. But I like this. I do like this line of dialogue that occurs in volume 2, right around the time that episode 4 ends, when Shion and him are like outside in the outskirts there, and Rat says, "I've been infected by Shion," kind of like the wasp has stung him. Nezumi has been infected by Shion's personality, and and Inukashi, or Doglone, notices that as well. Like, she picks up on it instantly. She's like, "Yeah, you got a thing for this kid, and it's gonna get you killed." And so it's like, I don't know. But the only other thing I did want to note is that Shion's mother apparently worked for this organization. I'm assuming it's Organization X, the baddies that we don't know much about, but are probably definitely baddies. But the man in the picture beside her in the manga, Nezumi instantly gets like a visceral reaction to him, and Shion's like, who's that? What's up? And he's like, that's the man that gave me my name. And it's like, oh, he's the guy that called you rat. And it's like, oh, so I'm starting to see the mom has connections to his organization. The reporter's trying to get connections through her. I still don't trust that reporter at all, or his niece is a kid, so whatever. But I don't trust him at all. But there's all these things like the inner workings are there, and of course Shion's father's not in the picture. He left early, so I'm like, if that scientist dude is his dad, that's gonna be creepy. So yeah, lots of things to think about. There's lots of things I want to talk about in the soapbox review that are different, but I've made notes of those. The only other thing that was really gross is that in volume 1, when Shion is talking about when he has been bitten or stung by the wasp, and it's like when he's changing and Rat saves him, in his head he's like, they're feeding on me, and I was like, nope, didn't need that. So in any case, we're on episode 5 of number 6, and I'm curious to see where this goes. So without further ado, we are going to start this episode here in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Okay. All right. Safu's character has gotten more interesting. I will say that. I was not a fan of Safu's character going into this show. The first couple episodes, she's so weird and she seems like such a product of the system. But her being, it's like she like went to study abroad and she like, her horizons were expanded and she got to like see all these people reading poetry and getting in touch with the humanities is what it seemed like. But it seems like it has affected her for the better. Like her going out and seeing and experiencing all this, she still has that really sanitized, like, kind of hygienic view on sex and things like that. But I do like Safu's character more. I'm very curious to know about that whole seeming telepathic link between her and Nezumi, like where that song come into play. It almost seemed like the song was like a Pavlovian response, like Nezumi had heard the song as a kid, and it was sung to him maybe while he was being experimented on, and that it triggered him. That trigger like made him freak out, kind of like a rat being exposed to stimuli. So I'm like, And I also find it very strange that Safu is in front of this stained glass window with the wasps, as if it was foretold in ancient prophecy. So there's a lot to think about with that. I was spoiled on one thing in this episode, and I have to admit it. At volume 2 ends with Safu finding out that her grandmother's died. That's all it says. At the very end of volume 2, I was like, oh no! I read it, and so I've decided I'm going to hold off on reading any more manga until I'm way into this series, like by maybe episodes 8 or 9, because I got to the end of volume 2, and the last chapter, like, oh, by the way, your grandmother's died, and I was like, oh no! And so I wondered if that was going to happen in the anime, and then when they said at the end of this episode, I was like, yeah, she died. What a commentary about from the woman that was helping in the Twilight House. I got kind of like viscerally angry at that woman in red, because my great grandmother, she actually recently passed, and she was in an assisted living home, kind of like Twilight House, and she was very mobile and could get around, but still, when that woman was like, we have to help them all the time, I was like, oh honey, you don't go there. And then of course she dies like 5 seconds later. So it was like, like such irony that she ends up talking about like her youth and beauty, and then the wasp comes out of her and it's totally different. But so the whole plan of waiting till spring is not working. The wasps are still living. They're still killing people. I'm assuming based on the preview that the grandmother of Safu just passed away from normal circumstances. But in the preview, it also looked like Safu was with Shion's mom, so I'm a little concerned about that, because I feel like them sending her back to number 6 like puts her in danger just as much. But I like the idea that they sneak Shion into the theater to warn to warn Nezumi about the wasps, and then what a twist! What a twist! It's Nezumi not as Hamlet but as Ophelia, which it makes sense now looking back at episode 4 when they said that his stage name was Eve. I was like, oh, well, in traditional Shakespearean plays, there weren't women actresses. They were all men. Men played all of the roles in a traditional Shakespearean play from the 1400s. So in those times, men would play the female characters as well. So that makes so much sense that he's Eve. But, oh man. So one thing from the manga, what's her name? Karen and Rico are the two kids that I didn't bring them up yet, but I'm glad they've showed up in the anime. Karen and Rico are those two little kids. And in the manga, when Shion first wakes up after the wasp has been taken out of him, after the pupa has been taken out, when in the manga, when Shion first wakes up, he like freaks out, and instead of undressing in the mirror, he goes outside at first. He goes outside and he runs into these two kids. And the one kid is like choking on something. Rico's choking on something, the boy is. And the girl's like, save him. And so he saves him. But they call him Snake. They're like, oh, that red ring around your neck. You look like and those red eyes and that white hair. You're a snake. And thinking back on it, Eve, with Nezumi's name being Eve, it's like a snake in the Garden of Eden. Like, Nezumi has been thrown off by Shion ever since he rescued him. And it's kind of like Nezumi's been drawn to him, like he's been infected by Shion. He's drawn to him, just like Shion is drawn to Nezumi. But Shion is very vocal about it and very open. He's like, no, I like you. I am drawn to you. I'm afraid of losing you. Like, he's saying all these emotional things. And Nezumi's like red flag. Nope, this is a bad sign. I'm trying to get away from you. You can't tell me that you like me. I know. And so, it's kind of like Nezumi has got the Garden of Eden here in this West Block, in this little ragtag shambles of a town, and Shion is a snake with the knowledge about love coming in to corrupt Nezumi. And that ending there where he's like, my vitals were open. It's almost like he's like, he attacked me. And he didn't attack him. It was like a touch, like he was touching you, like it was something intimate. Which is kind of funny because back in episode 3, Nezumi kind of ran his hand down Shion's hair and like kind of cupped his hand too. So I don't know if that was maybe subconscious and Nezumi didn't quite realize what he was doing in the moment. And then it's like, oh no, you were very, very handsy there with Shion. And now that it's flipped in reverse, it's like, oh. But I wonder if Nezumi didn't want Shion to come see him perform in the play for a number of reasons. Obviously, like he says, he's like, there's scoundrels there, there's people that could hurt you, like they come here for a good time, but they could shank you in the hallway, like I didn't want you there being in trouble. But he got really angry, so I wonder if he also didn't want Shion to see him in that vulnerable state. Because anytime you act and have been in a play, you are showing off a bit of vulnerability. You know, you're revealing, anytime you act, it's putting on a persona, but you get to kind of reveal some vulnerabilities about yourself and like bring that out, right? And I think Nezumi was thinking, like, as Ophelia, if you've ever read Hamlet, Ophelia is a very tragic character. Like, she is all about, you know, she loves Hamlet, but it's very unrequited. Hamlet is so obsessed with the goal ahead of him that he can't see her love, and she eventually kills herself and drowns because she's like, she can't take it anymore. Which is ironic because in reality, Nezumi is kind of like Hamlet. He's so blinded by the idea of destroying number 6, he can't see this great thing in front of him, which is Shion and his caring. And so, as Ophelia, Nezumi is experiencing that, and so him seeing, and you know, and there is like that, you know, he's in a very feminine role, and he probably doesn't want Shion. He wants Shion to believe that he's this tough guy that can take care of himself, and he can beat the system and survive and all this. But as Ophelia, he's very vulnerable and delicate, and I don't think he wanted Shion to see him like that. And of course, Shion is like enraptured. He's like hanging off the balcony. He's like, this performance is so good. And he doesn't care. He's just so enamored by Nezumi. And then that whole weird psychic connection thing with Safu and him take place. I'm curious how that's expanded in the manga, if it is. I'll be interested when I get to that part. Like I said, I'm going to hold off a few extra episodes and wait and see what all happens. But this, and then the dancing scene, oh my gosh, them dancing. Just the idea like dancing with someone and teaching him how, and this little simple intimate moments. Like, Nezumi, dude, you both are hooked on each other. Like, this is pretty easy to see. And I think Nezumi's just in denial about it. But we know. We as the audience, we get it. Yeah, that they like each other. So, and it's just, Shion is so afraid that something bad. When Shion says, I'm afraid of losing you, Nezumi's like, you're vocalizing everything that I'm saying, that I'm thinking, but you're saying it out loud. It's like, ugh. So, the government's trying to cover up the wasps. The wasps are still killing people. Safu's grandmother's passed, so she's going back to number 6. There's this weird connection between Safu and Nezumi. Shion is definitely proving to be Nezumi's weakness. And I love how Nezumi said, he's like, don't make this into a kindergarten. It's like bringing these kids in. But Shion points out, he's like, you're being kind too. I gave the kids, you gave the kid, that girl, your sweater, which is one that I gave you. I recognized it. And Nezumi's like, crap, I was caught. But you're being nice too. You're just not being vocal about it. You're not trying to show it. And so I've only seen those kids like in a couple moments in the manga, but I don't know. I really thought for a second, like Shion, I really thought that Nezumi had been affected by the wasp. And I was like, oh, are we doing this? And then it was something else. But very interesting. Very, very interesting. I'm so curious now what's going to end up happening with this whole wasp situation. But also, Doglone's Inukashi's kind of in on some things. The man, Regika, I can't ever remember his name in this, but the old man from the Latch Building being afraid of rats, and he's in on it too. So it's a matter of time before other people start figuring out what's going on and getting all tied up in this. So I'm curious what we're going to do with that. But this episode was really good. If you know me, I am all for a character-driven story. And I know that while I'm reading the manga, there's going to be more plot that the anime isn't covering that I'll probably get to and talk about in future episodes. But I really like this episode because it's definitely proving that Nezumi is very aware that his weakness is Shion. And Shion being very forward about his feelings is not helping matters. But I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. I'm curious to know what you guys thought of the episode. Please, no spoilers. Like I said, I cut off at volume 2 of the manga, and that's right when we found this news about her grandma. So I will probably hold off maybe until episode 6 before I go back to the manga. Or not next episode 6, maybe episode 7 before I go back to the manga, just to give it some time to play out so I don't read too far ahead. Because the manga volumes cover a lot, I feel. And I feel like now that we're entering into the latter half of the season, and we're going to cut it way short of the manga, there's going to be a lot left out. So I don't know. I've got to think about that, how I want to proceed. But in any case, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and I'll be back next week with episode 6 of number 6. Bye.